My goal in life is to become a doctor. Big dreams, I know. And right now I'm taking college biology, which is one of the most stressful classes I have ever taken, and anyone in that class will agree. College biology is not only stressful to me because it affects my grades and my GPA, but it also affects my future because college biology is one of the main building blocks for my career. And because I'm worrying and stressing about this so much, it leads to me having anxiety attacks. And that guided me to my question: does stress cause anxiety and depression? Raise your hand if you have ever experienced stress before. It's safe to say that every single one of us was raising our hands. Stress is the emotional pressure put on a living organism. When someone is stressed, the amount of neural connections in the amygdala, which is the brain's fear center, intensifies, and as the levels of cortisol increase, the electric signals in the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain associated with learning, memories, and stress control, worsens. When someone is depressed, the hippocampus shrinks, and when someone has anxiety disorder, the brain signals and brain anatomy is disrupted. Researchers have now discovered how stress causes anxiety and depression using rats. They used rats due to the fact that they could see the same signs of depression in rats as they do humans. So what they did is they began their research off with filling the rats' cages with water, tipping the rats' cages, and putting a different light source in the rats' cages to cause them to be stressed. Once they showed signs, the same signs as humans did for depression, they looked at the rats' brains, and what they found was that the stressed rats produced 20% fewer new brain cells, and the area worst affected was the innate gyrus, which is in the hippocampus and associated with short-term memory loss. What they concluded with was that stress led to reduced new brain cells, which led to the hippocampus shrinking, which ended up leading to depression. Jagdish Dua also created a study where he looked at the positives and the negatives that stress had on mood disorders, and what he found was that the higher levels of stress that one was put under, the higher level of mood disorders that they experienced. And that guided me to do my own research. I surveyed 100 students and asked them how often they had experienced stress. And what I found was that 51% said daily, 26% said often, 18% said sometimes, and 5% said rarely. As you can see, not one of them said that they had never experienced stress, which shows how common it really is. I then asked what their main cause for their stress was. 93% said school, 49% said family, 34% said relationships, 31% said other, and 22% said sports. This shows that stress comes from all aspects of everyone's lives, and it pretty much can't be avoided. I next asked if it affected their everyday life, like school, work, or family, and 55% of them said that it did, 41% said sometimes, and 4% said that it did not affect their lives. I then, to continue my survey, I asked how often they felt anxious, and 33% said daily, 26% said often, 24% said sometimes, 14% said rarely, and 3% said that they had never experienced anxiety. I then asked how often they had felt mood swings, sadness, hopelessness, or agitation, which are some of the most common symptoms of depression. And what I found was that 29% of them said that they had daily felt these symptoms. 29% said often, 25% said sometimes, 15% said rarely, and 2% said that they had never experienced the symptoms of depression. Right now in the United States, 25% of teenagers suffer from anxiety. That is 1/4 of the teenage population. Also, in the United States, 3 million teenagers have been diagnosed with depression. For my research, I found that 95 out of the 100 students I surveyed felt stress, anxiety, and depression, showing that the three have a strong correlation to one another. To conclude, the more stress that we are putting on our students today, the more susceptible we are making them to stress, to anxiety and depression in the future. Thank you.